So in my district, we do not test it. We do not test for gifted and talented. However, I know there's a number of districts that do test. So what happens when you find out that students test and they are gifted? What do you do?
That's a great question. I think we have to go back to, like, what does it mean to be gifted? Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. In my district, we have a lot of high-performing students. And because they have a high academic aptitude and they're A+, and they score higher in standardized assessment,
Right.
they have a lot of school aptitude. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the G&T profile. Sometimes parents mistaken school performance
Right.
for being truly gifted and talented. And that's a difficult conversation to have. So one of the things that we look for in a truly gifted child is someone who has very unique self-interest, is very self-directed learner,
Yes.
almost to the exclusion of what we want them to do in the class.
Right.
They are so into what they're into that sometimes they're misbehaving or they're not attentive in the lesson. So one of the ways I've tried to manage that, I think we could go the wrong route and discipline that and spend too much time and energy in redirecting them into teacher compliance.
Right.
What we need for them to do to adhere to teachers' routine. I've had way better luck into first having them explain their interests to me and having a kind of like a way that they could further their learning in class. Have them identify what it is that they want to learn, set some learning goal, have them design something that they could do to further that learning, and then they're using me as a mentor, maybe as a sounding board to continue their own learning.
I think it's a matter of really considering what's best for that student and forcing a student into conformity when they have this understanding, an understanding that may be deeper even than that of the instructor. If when you talk about the profoundly gifted, then you need to look for ways for them to continue to grow and to develop as the individuals that they are. And that may mean replacement curriculum, that may mean extension curriculum, it could mean a lot of things, but it would take, I think, a group of educators who know the student to sit down together and to make a plan. And that plan may be different based on the student because they don't all fit into a nice, easy little compartment. Giftedness can take so many forms that it's almost you have to plan for each one.
Right. So that's what I'm hearing now is that really find their passion, their interests, and then allow them the time and space to explore that with you being more facilitator rather than teaching into that. And then also allowing that the giftedness isn't a box that they check off necessarily. You may not necessarily see it in the math class, but give them an instrument and they're able to perform Mozart, reading music for the first time as well. So really getting to know the children as individuals.
Oh, absolutely. I had students, and it kind of brings up the idea of dual exceptionalities.
Yes.
I had students who were considered to be special education learning disabled, but were incredibly talented, as you said, musicians. And it was important to make space for that in that student's day where, we could have said, okay, you need extra help in all these areas because of your IEP, but part of that IEP really needed to be that he needed to follow his passion and he needed to play the bass because he did it so well and it brought him such joy. And making that part of his educational plan was very important. So
as I'm getting along in my career, I'm starting to see aspects of G&T education that I really love, and I wonder, shouldn't all my students have access to this quality of education, this idea of teaching them to become self-directed learners or to develop a passion So I'm looking at some work like passion projects or do you know anything about how to leverage this type of G&T learning for all students?
Absolutely. It's so funny that you mentioned that because I think about our students that might be behavior problems, and I have my gifted and talented teacher working with those students to think outside the box, to have them do a makers program where for science, they're making things and breaking apart the computer and looking at the inside of a computer, and then that's an analogy for the human system. But they're able to understand the breaking down of a computer, and maybe not necessarily the digestive system and memorizing terms, but they're able to interchange that. And because they have that space, all of a sudden now they're well behaved in English as a result of it too. But it's working with our teachers to think outside of the box. And although they've gone through their repertoire of this behavior management plan, and it's getting those experts that are G&T teachers who really they have no limits to present those and see what happens. Because then you find out that more students could actually benefit from it as a result.
Do you think that this is something that's more of an advanced teaching technique, or do you think that this is something that new teachers and first-year teachers can try to experiment with their own practice?
That's a good question. Actually, I do think it is a little advanced because I do think you do need to try some other traditional behavior management pieces, or try your working with your support staff too as well. But also think outside the box when you have to come to that INRS team. Say, I've done this and this and that. Invite the G&T teacher, because I'm sure there are some strategies that you didn't think of that actually work with our high performing students that could work with our struggling learners as well.
I think that's where mentoring comes in and is so important too with our newer faculty members, is that when they are in a situation where that may be the case, is making sure that they have the support of other faculty members with expertise in that area to come in and to give them guidance and to give them support.